Good afternoon and welcome to the Rotary Club of York, the 26th largest Rotary Club in the world, and a club dedicated to imagining and carrying out the Rotary mission of service. I am Glenn Miller, the club president. Our opening song today, America the Beautiful, and the Pledge of Allegiance will be led by our soon-to-be president, Aaron Jacobs. Our invocation will be led by our past president, Jackie Summers, and our visitors and visiting Rotarians will be introduced by Tom Donnelly. Please take a moment to silence your electronic devices.
I like surprises. Do you like surprises? Okay. Just sing what I think is America the Beautiful. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of rain, for purple mountains' majesty above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed his grace on thee and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hello. Would you please join me in a word of prayer? Gracious God, we give you thanks for this time of fellowship as we open our hearts to the cares of the world and the role we are guided to play in ensuring a meaningful path for all we are called to serve. May your words of truth be planted firmly within us and help us to keep focused on what is pure and right. Shine your light on us so that we may make a difference, and may we reflect your peace to a world that desperately needs your presence and healing. Bless our speakers and their work in building and retaining more diverse and inclusive workplaces. Enable us to be architects of understanding. Let us build bridges across all that divides us and help us to unite and rejoice in our diversity. We give you thanks for this food, that it may nourish and strengthen us, and thank you for the people who have prepared and served it. To you, we commend this time and thank you for your presence with us now and always. Amen.
Good afternoon, Rotarians. In former Mayor John Brenner style, good afternoon, Rotarians. I want to get you pumped up for our speakers here and for our leadership, President Glenn in particular. I'm pleased to have the honor of introducing our guests for today's meeting. Guests, when I call your name, please stand and remain standing until President Glenn has welcomed you. First, Cora Taylor, guest of Andy Rawitz, Natalie Gunderson, and Chris Vetter, guests of Mark Wheeler. Nicole Schaefer, guest of Bobby DeLeo. Roberta Lowe, Joe Iandolo, guest of Joe Iandolo. Joanne Wilmore and Alice Ann Frost, guests of Elaine Bonneau. Sully Pinos and Marlena Schucht, guests of Kevin Schreiber. Clarence Dade, guest of Norman Humber. Adrian Buckner, guest of Jane Conover. Service Above Self Committee guests, Kathleen Mursky, Deb Etter, Ruby Schmidt, Fifi Spangler, Teresa Kwai, one of our speakers, and our other speakers, Tanisha Fuentes, Zach Marovich, Kurt Bangs, Tina Schultz, Margaret Eccles-Ray, Kayla Johnson, guest of CJ Gross, and Jack Dyson, guest of Cal Weary. President Glenn.
Friends, we are delighted to have you with us today at the Rotary Club of York. I know that you will enjoy the program as well as the fellowship of the diverse members of our club that surround you. I hope you will return to us in the future and for another visit and perhaps even consider joining our ranks. Rotarians, please help me welcome our visitors. You may be seated. And Tom, the proper use of the comma is integral when introducing our visitors. You gave one of them a stroke because she thought she was one of the speakers today. So it's all good. You're okay. Several announcements before we get to our program. The IDEA committee will meet on Monday, March the 20th at 8 a.m. via Zoom. On March the 30th, the Fellowship Committee is hosting a networking event at the York SPCA. Things are clearly going to the dogs. If interested in attending, please see past President Rob Bowen to register for that event. As a reminder, our March 29th meeting will be held at the Yorktown Hotel in downtown York. Rotarians and their guests must be registered in advance. That's the case for all of our off-site meetings, as you would understand. You may use the QR code on your table with your smartphone or the link found in the announcer. If you use that QR code, a reminder to turn off your phone's Wi-Fi service before doing so. We continue to welcome donations to our Turkey earthquake relief efforts. We've had some lovely contributions. There was, of course, a contribution from the CEF board, and we would like to see all of those in by the end of March. We would certainly accept those donations after, but if we could motivate you to think about that and make a decision by the end of March, we would be grateful. You may, again, follow the instructions in the announcer for making those donations, or you can reach out directly to Lynn for instruction. In the past year, club leadership made changes to the process by which we nominate candidates for the board of directors and officers of the club. Here today to present the slate of nominees is the chair of our new nominating committee, past President Dave Meckley.
Thank you, Glenn. Excuse me. Before making my report, I would like to thank the members of the nominating committee for their work. Danny Bachman, Michael Black, Jen May, Glenn Miller, Joyce Santiago, Brian Tate, Jules Tolbert, and Cal Weary. As recommended by the nominating committee, the board of directors approved placing the following individuals in nomination to serve their second two-year term on the Rotary Club of York Board of Directors for the 23 to 25 years. Bill Hartman and Cal Weary. Further, as recommended by the nominating committee, the board of directors approved placing the following individuals in nomination to serve their first two-year term on the Rotary Club of York Board of Directors, again for the 23 to 25 year. Elaine Bonneau and Kelly Gibson. These individuals will serve with the following directors continuing their second year of their first term: Dee Baker, Jen May, Joan Mummer, and Jules Tolbert.
Are there any further nominations from the floor?
I move that the nominations for board of directors be closed.
It's been moved. Is there a second? All those in favor of closing the nominations say aye. All those opposed, same sign. It is carried.
And finally, as recommended by the nominating committee, the board of directors approved placing the following individuals in nomination as officers for the 23-24 Rotary year. Aaron Jacobs as president, Courtney Piccolo as president-elect, Doug Berman as financial vice president, and Wilda Alessi as president-elect nominee.
Are there additional nominations for these officer positions from the floor?
Move that the nominations for president-elect, financial vice president, and president-elect nominee be closed.
All those in favor, aye. Opposed, same sign. Those nominations are closed. Could I please ask those who have been newly nominated as board members and Wilda, if she's here as president-elect, to rise and be recognized? Kelly, Elaine. Okay, we got 2 out of 3. All right. Thank you, Past President Dave. We will return to this next week pursuant to our bylaws. They are now placed in nomination, and the week following this meeting, we will, as a group, elect these individuals to those offices. And again, my deep thanks to Dave for his incredible leadership throughout this transition to our new system, for the great work of the nominating committee. And now, speaking of nominees and elections, past President Josh George has a newly elected member to present. Josh.
Good afternoon, Rotarians and guests. Today it's my privilege to introduce a new member to our club. Joining us today is Jill Kovach. Do not call her Kovac, call her Kovach. Jill is a graduate of Daniel Boone High School, which is in Berks County, and she went on to earn her Bachelor of Science degree in Industrial Engineering from Penn State, and then an MBA from Mount St. Mary's. She currently serves as the president of New Tech Facilities Corporation, which is one of the affiliated companies with New Tech Design Associates and also JDB Engineering. Her volunteer and community service activities include work with the St. Rose of Lima Church and School, where she serves as both a lecturer and a volunteer. She has the co-chair of the York Catholic Music Association, and also heavily involved in a co-chair in the Women in Manufacturing Association. And she's also volunteered with Junior Achievement. Her hobbies include reading, kayaking, fishing, hiking, and crafting. She is married to Mark, and they have 3 kids, Mason, who is 19, Miranda, who is 17, and Parker, who is 12. And she is proposed, do not hold this against her, by Aaron Jacobs. Ladies and gentlemen, Jill Kovach.
Jill, welcome to this club and to this family of community leaders. I know that we will be a better club for having you as one of our members, and I hope that you will feel yourself a better citizen of our community by being a part of this fellowship. There are many, many opportunities for you to share the many gifts that I know that you have to join us in both imagining and carrying out a world and a community that is better. And so I hope that you will embrace that fully. As one of our past presidents like to say, that you'll go from being a member of the Rotary Club to being a Rotarian. We trust that that will happen. Rotarians, let's give our newest member a warm welcome. And now, board member-elect Kelly Gibson has a word to share from York Rotary Grants.
Good afternoon. The York Rotary Grants Letter of Interest for 2023 is now open. On our yorkrotary.org website, right there is all the information you would need to apply for this grant. Our grants committee has elected 2 focus areas that were similar, actually the same as last year, which is growing local economies, really focusing on our economic development and impact, and peace and social justice with a focus on preventing gun violence. So if you want to be involved in the grants committee, you are always welcome to join us. They have the wonderful job of reading all of the applications we receive and funding impactful programs. We also instituted as a committee a match requirement this year. We will fund projects and programs that qualify anywhere between $2,500 and $10,000, but there must be an additional match of funding to qualify. So we're excited to have larger impact programs apply. Please spread the word to your networks. We've already gotten some LOIs submitted. And again, the deadline is April 10th. So please share it far and wide. We're excited to bring you the grantees from this year once we get them all through, and they will be for projects that happen July 1 of this year through June 30 of next. Thank you.
Kelly and her committee have brought great energy and focus and organization to the work of making grants, and we're very grateful for it. And thank you very much, Kelly. And now it is my pleasure to welcome Michael Hady, who will present several Service Above Self awards today. Michael.
It's always a great day at Rotary when we get to recognize outstanding community service people, volunteers in this community that are really having an impact. And today we're going to honor four wonderful ladies from the Good Elementary Garden, and there'll be some slides up there of the garden about it. The renovation and maintenance of the courtyard garden at Alexander Good Elementary School has been an ongoing volunteer project since the fall of 2014. When Temple Beth Israel added the courtyard to its Doing Good for Good Social Action Committee. Since then, with donations of goods and services from various local businesses, especially Day of Service from Hively Landscaping Company, the donations from individuals and organizations like Rotary, it has been transformed into a 10,000 square foot wasteland of weeds, broken down raised beds, falling down rock walls, and a scum and trash-filled pond into an outdoor classroom and an oasis for students and staff alike. Today, the pond is filled with fish. There are picnic tables for sitting and working, a greenhouse built by York College engineering students, new raised beds, and more than enough native plants to qualify for 3 different pollinator habitat designations. 4 volunteers that we have with us today, Deb Etter, Kem Mirsky, Ruby Schmidt, and Fifi Spangler, have been responsible for the planning, planting, weeding, mulching, watering, and pond tending. Every spring, they plant a sunflower bed with the pre-K, a Three Sisters Native American garden with the 5th and 6th graders. Spring and fall, students help plant and harvest everything from peppers, beans, tomatoes, to potatoes, garlic, and squash. With a new operating system for the greenhouse and the assistance of York College, a hydroponic system is next, which will allow for growing of produce all winter. Please help me welcome and honor our honorees today.
Felt like I was at the Academy Awards for a moment with those. And my apologies, I did make the mistake, Joe. You were supposed to be next, but my apologies. And it is, first, let me say a word to our awardees. As you all probably know, the Rotary Club of York is grounded in the motto of service above self. And it is truly our honor to be honoring you, who have honored us in the community with your great work. You have demonstrated that you are indeed true Rotarians in everything except completing the paperwork, and we'd be happy to talk to you about that after the meeting. But in the meantime, again, our deep, deep thanks for all that you have done in this work. Let us give another round of applause to these 4 marvelous ladies. And now, it is my pleasure to welcome Joe Stein from PPE, who will present the PPE Minute.
I think I get some bonus time now. We got a long one today. PPE is really active right now. Today we have a happy hour at 4 o'clock, White Rose Bar and Grill, downtown York, 4 to 5:30. Come out, see what we're doing, make suggestions, all that kind of good stuff. April 22nd, we have our spring tree planting. So if you're available, 8 a.m., we'll share information about that in coming weeks, but we'll be planting 17 trees in downtown York. Today's topic is inspired by Glenn, who touched base with me about wish cycling. So last month we talked about electronics recycling. Today we're talking about wish cycling And the information provided is really going to be summarized here real quickly. We've obtained this information through our contacts at York County Solid Waste Authority. And what they've said about this wish cycling is that what happens is people get confused. They go to other areas where they have family and they hear about something that's being recycled. And so they think that it's recycled here, or the product says it's recyclable. So we dump all this stuff in the recycling bin. And that's really problematic for the local recycling facilities. And so what you're supposed to do is really, whatever your guidelines are in your own local community, is that's the only thing you're supposed to put in your recycling bin. These bales, it's a very labor intensive process to then take all that stuff, separate it at the recycling facility, package it all together and sell it out as a commodity. When those commodities are contaminated, when if you have all cardboard and then there's pieces of metal and plastic in there, it gets rejected. And that's something that happened with Penn Waste in 2018. They lost a contract because too much of their recycling was contaminated. So it's important to also remember to rinse your recyclables. Food debris is another type of contaminant that they really want to try and keep out of the recycling stream as much as possible. The worst contaminants they note are rechargeable batteries, and this is incredibly dangerous for the people that are involved in the recycling. So they ask you to keep those out of the recycling bins and trash as well, because another such local instance of this was at Penn Waste in March of 22, where a fire caused millions of dollars of damage. And so really the takeaway from all of this is recycle what you're directed to. If you want to go above and beyond, we'll have some information on that in the upcoming months. But for right now, follow your local community guidelines. We'll provide all this information to the communications committee to post on Facebook so you can kind of get all this in greater detail. And we look forward to seeing you this afternoon and again soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe, and thanks for taking my suggestion. People hardly ever do what I ask them to do. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Kevin Schreiber, who will introduce our speaker for the day. Kevin.
Okie dokie. All right, bear with me. I'm going to try to be as quick as Joe, or at least talk faster. In 2018, the Confronting Racism Coalition was established, now co-chaired by Nicole Schaefer, in large part with community support from our York County Community Foundation, United Way, the JCC, YCEA, and the York NAACP, and a host of over 70 committed civic leaders who met monthly over the course of several years and continue to meet to this day to initiate lasting change in our community. From that coalition, which continues today, created an economic equity plan. Many of those recommendations of that plan were then woven into the 2020 York County Economic Action Plan adopted by our county government. A key recommendation within those documents was to leverage our corporate support, our corporate sector and employers to identify and share best practices that they are utilizing to attract, retain, train, and elevate diverse employees and ensure that their workplaces are welcoming to employees of all backgrounds, and in turn, educating others how to do the same. The theory posited was that leveraging the muscle of our private sector to establish more welcoming workplaces across our region will in turn ensure that we are a welcoming community. Two elements were critical from the start of the Welcoming Workplace Initiative. It was important that the inaugural council tapped the C-suite leadership within organizations to ensure buy-in from the top. And further, it was absolutely vital that policies, procedures, and best practices were viewed through the lens of economic competitiveness for the company or for our county. Ensuring a welcoming workplace is important for a variety of very self-evident reasons, but these private sector solutions were critical too for our economy. Preeminent publications such as Forbes or McKinsey have consistently noted diversity and inclusion is a competitive differentiator for companies and markets. So over the course of 2021, through a facilitated process, the inaugural Welcoming Workplace Council was established. The council was comprised of major employers across a spectrum of industries, was chaired by the WellSpan CEO, Roxana Gapster, and Kinsley Enterprise Chief HR Officer, Bill Yanovich. The Welcoming Workplace Council mined and shared best practices within the workplace. An online resource library was created with local solutions, and the Welcoming Workplace designation was created. Think of it like a best places to work campaign. We want employers to aspire to receive this designation and this recognition. We now have over 50 welcoming workplaces designated in York County. These are private institutions, they're nonprofit, they're government organizations, And if your workplace is interested in seeking a designation, please contact our team or visiting the Welcoming Workplace website. It was important to have CEOs at the table, but we also recognize that much of the implementation and evangelization of this work will fall to a coalition of advocates to recruit, educate, and implement. With us today to highlight some of the practices within their own welcoming workplaces are two champions we are very, very lucky to have in York County, leading the implementation of welcoming workplace work and doing transformative work in their own right within their workplace. Kim and Demietra are changing the paradigm within the employment setting, and they are true leaders of diversity, equity, and inclusivity within our region. Kim Brister is the VP and Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer at WellSpan Health, where she leads organizational strategy to build a diverse workforce and advance an inclusive workplace. She's got over 30 years of HR experience. She's got an MBA. She's got some certificates. She's well educated. I mean, she's awesome. So skipping to get to the good stuff. Kim was also honored with the Diversity Impact Award. She is a past Spirit of Yoko awardee. And in 2 consecutive years, she was named to the Power List of Diversity, the Power 100 list, of diversity leaders by city and state. Demietra Middleton is the Field HR Manager for Harley-Davidson York Vehicle Operations Plant, if you can't tell by the swag she's wearing today. In her role there, she is also a leader of the on-site STEAM program and Site Inclusion Council. She's got a bachelor's degree. She's got a master's degree. She's awesome as well. It's a lot of stuff here, guys. But she's also a Spirit of Yoko Award winner. And then now that I mean, most people in this county know these two women. They're incredible. But did you know that their favorite guilty pleasure movie for Kim is The Godfather, for Demietra is The Wiz. Their guilty pleasure dessert for Demietra is creme brulee. For Kim, it's hot fudge sundae with extra hot fudge. They're currently binge watching. Kim is binge watching Harlem, and Demietra Serpent Queen. She's also a huge fan of Rick and Morty. Talk about that later. Favorite book is Demietra's is Rest is Resistance, and Kim is rereading now why I know why the caged bird sings. Their favorite destination vacation. Talk to Kim later this year. She'll be in Lisbon, Portugal. She's trying to learn Portuguese at this moment. And Demietra just loves going to her safe place in Myrtle. Their favorite, their favorite song is, this was a tough one, but I will say Demietra immediately said Bohemian Rhapsody. We'll also talk about that later and maybe hear it later. And then Kim's is All I Do by Stevie Wonder. And you'll find them after today's presentation moseying across to the bar where they would order. Kim would get a Malibu Bay Breeze and Demietra an old fashioned. Ladies and gentlemen, Rotarians, help me introduce and welcome Demietra and Kim.
Okay, as you all can see, I'm a little vertically challenged, so I'm, just moving the mic a little bit. You probably have to move the camera a little bit, everything a little bit, just to get to me. Thank you for the invitation, being here today. I've been at WellSpan for about 16 years, and I've seen a lot happen in those 16 years. But I can tell you the most impactful, at least for me, has been the last 4, and that was the arrival of our CEO. Dr. Roxana Gapster, when she said, DEI couldn't be passive any longer. It needed to be a strategic priority for our organization. And that started our journey. So Dee and I are here, and as Kevin said, it's easy to see which one's Dee with the Harley. She and I are here to kind of share some, nuggets of information about the journey with welcoming workplaces. Next slide. This one, okay. That's the one. There we go. All right, Kevin already gave the history of welcoming workplaces, right? And it was about bringing, a group of organizations together, and now, as we know, 50 strong organizations together to say, how can we create an environment and organizations that welcome folks from all backgrounds, right? How do we, really lean in and be intentional? Because without intentionality, honestly, this work really doesn't happen organically. Unfortunately, that's just the reality of things. So the intentionality has been critical. And I think it's been critical from the inception of this group and then the work that we've been doing at our particular organizations, which Dee and I will share a little bit later. So it's about talent attraction. So how do you actually attract key talent to your organization? And I remember at my organization saying, you know, we can recruit, you know, diverse people all day long. But what are we doing to create a culture where that diverse talent really believes that they have an opportunity to thrive? And in today's market, as we know, there's just not enough of a supply of team members out there. Therefore, you know, focusing on not only talent attraction, but talent retention is equally important. And then it's those policies, processes, and procedures, you know, so what's that infrastructure that you're creating to make sure that you're holding your team members accountable? I always say we can write, once again, you can write all the policies in the world, but are they living policies? Are there things that you're really holding your team members accountable for? So that's equally as important. And then the knowledge sharing of diversity, equity, and inclusive training. I think the benefit of welcoming workplaces is making a connection with organizations who may be just a little bit further along in their journey with others who are looking to kind of get things started, because there's always something that you can do to build this work within your organization. Guess I went the wrong way. What I heard is that word on the street is that CJ, raise your hand, did a presentation last June on the business case, you know, for diversity, right? Why is it so important to organizations? Being able to accelerate representation is so key. It really does need to start at the top. Right, within these organizations. So as you can see here, you see some demographics, and of course you see how low the numbers are. And when you think about the fact that 14% of the US population, just as an example, is Black, but less than 1% are Black CEOs, that kind of tells you that there's deficiency, right? There's disparity, there's gaps in being able to have individuals from those diverse backgrounds leading organizations to be able to share those diverse perspectives. As you can see, that women comprise nearly of half of the labor force, but only 18 Fortune 500 CEOs, 3.6% are female. I'm glad to be able to say, you know, my CEO is one of that 3.6%. So as you see here, by 2024, we say 60% of the US labor force will be considered non-white. We are going to continue as a country to become more and more diverse. I use these same statistics within my organization to say, as our diverse populations are the folks coming through our doors are more diverse, we need to ensure that our team members are equally as diverse as those particular populations. Because we know in healthcare, it could be a matter of life and death. In healthcare, you know, being able to see a provider who is more concordant with who you are as an individual really has a positive impact on health equity. So we recognize the importance of that. Another statistic to be able to share is that there are over 900,000 providers across the US. Less than 6% are providers of color, specifically Black providers, and less than, or actually 2% are male providers. There's some really, really low numbers, right? So when you think about the impact that has, you know, for patients coming into your organization, there's obviously not enough of a supply. So it's equally as important for our allies to also have this knowledge and cultural competency being able to care for diverse populations. I think one of the biggest facts that I recently learned and I see here on the screen is closing the racial equity gap could add over $2 trillion to the US economy by 2050. So once again, by closing those disparity gaps, it isn't just about uplifting those from those marginalized communities, but it really lifts up the whole boat. It lifts us all as a community, as a country, and as an organization. So that's another area to think about. I'm thinking this is Dee's turn.
Hello, good afternoon. Again, a pleasure to be, I am a little bit taller than Kim, just a little bit. Again, thank you for having us here. First of all, I enjoy being paired with Kim. I learned so much about her, and her title is VP. That doesn't get any better than that. Looking at why join us for Welcoming Workplaces, again, WellSpan is a huge employer here in this community. Harley-Davidson, global wide, we're only about 6,000 employees. A lot of people think because of the brand name, we're this huge company, but we're not that large. And in York, we employ about 1,500 people. So no matter what size, whether you're a company of 2 people on up to a company as large as WellSpan or larger, there's something for you. It's a 2-year commitment. That's all we're asking for. There is just, you just have to have the need to be intentional, to want to learn and do better. And it's simple things that you can do that you'll hear both Kim talk about that can help move the needle to make you a more inclusive and belonging workplace. Again, you can see a long list of industries from nonprofit, arts, hospitality, utilities, transportation, manufacturing, government, and some of the things that you'll see when you visit our website or you partner with other companies that are part of this is, learning about establishing employee resource groups, for example, or development of diversity, equity, and inclusion positions, postings, leadership positions. Again, it's just that cohort of people where you can talk to, get advice, and just learn more about how being a welcoming workplace. And you get a very cool sticker. We took the picture out of it, but if you go to the website, it is an awesome sticker to put in your door, your window, somewhere at work. And it really does start a conversation, right? When someone sees it, it kind of puts you in mind in certain restaurants, right? Where you see that A rating versus that E rating, that might determine whether you eat there or not, right? So it gives that same good feel, in my opinion, to see that sticker with businesses. Maybe I didn't learn about the going along there too. Oh, all right. So benefits, again, some which I already mentioned, again, strengthening that pipeline, having that core, having that network of organizations that you can reach out to. You don't have to worry about, well, how do we do this job posting, or maybe how do we do this initiative at work to really help our employees feel like they belong and they are included? How are we going to retain employees? You can actually reach out to any members of the Welcoming Workplace. So that's part of what joining us gives you. And one thing I asked, because this is an eye chart, I'm sure I asked Kevin to pull up, because when you talk about diversity, people either will have a negative or positive reaction, I find, right? It's usually very, very polarizing. However, there's so much more than diversity than you standing looking at a Black female standing at the podium. It's about experiences, it's religion, it's your body language, it's your mental health. There's so much to it. And so you'd be surprised if you just took a moment to really look into what being part of Welcoming Workplaces is and connecting with other organizations that are part of it, what you could find out and how you could really help your employees in their diverse background. So this is just one theory on how many dimensions of diversity there is. There's several more theories out there, but again, just want you to think outside the box of what you could do with your employees if you join Welcoming Workplaces. And now I will turn it back over to Ms. Kim to talk about what.
Thank you, Dee. So you have the document that she's handed out. You also have the iceberg, theory of diversity, which is, sometimes people are just focusing on what they can see, and there's a whole person underneath that surface. So being able to think about that. So what I wanted to do is just take those 4 overarching theories, right, and talk about what has WellSpan been doing in this particular space. And the first is that talent attraction. So it's, creating an environment, once again, where team members really feel that they belong, that they can bring their full selves to work, and that they have an opportunity to excel. How do we do that? At WellSpan, one thing that we do is we've created a culture of belonging survey.
We started it back in 2020. We just did our second one in 2022. And it gives our team members an opportunity where we do engagement surveys. And this is something completely different. This is all about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Do I feel like I belong here? Do I feel like my voice is heard? At WellSpan, we talk about having 22,000 problem solvers. Well, you're not going to have that if folks don't feel safe elevating their voice, or they don't feel that when they do, that it matters. So it's really kind of creating that culture of belonging, giving our team members opportunities to kind of share their thoughts and feelings and then create goals based on that belonging survey. What I can say is from our first survey and our second survey, we actually saw an increase specifically with our racially diverse team members, which is really, really good to see. They were below benchmark in some instances, and now they're above benchmark. And how did we accomplish that? Once again, elevating voices. So we created a program a year ago. When I started doing this work back in, like I said, 2019, I'd have emails coming from team members all the time. How can I get involved? How can I get involved? How can I get involved? And it was really difficult to even wrap my head around how do they get involved when we're just getting started. You know, so I set up a DEI steering committee of individuals from across our organization, pretty much leaders from across our organization, and kept thinking about how can I get team members involved in this work. So last year, we actually launched an initiative called the Inclusion Champions Training Program. Have a committee of folks that I've been working with to get that established. And I was really lowballing it. I thought, I get 25 people, even though we have a lot of folks, I just don't know how many people actually want to get involved in this work, maybe 25 folks. So we planned for a cohort of 25 people to go through training that we curated. And we got over 200 applications. So I was like, okay, regroup. So now we need to do 8 training cohorts with 25 people in each of those cohorts. And of course, we lost some folks through attrition, either, they dropped out or things along those lines. But we have 140 some individuals that have committed to be promoters of equity, disrupt bias when they see it, and then be unapologetic allies to everyone with all of those dimensions of diversity that Deidre talked about. And we're about to launch our second offering of that work. And I believe that being able to incorporate folks, and actually that group, that 140 is more diverse even than our organization, really enabled people to elevate their voices. And what we also did was take that group of folks, and anytime that we were focusing on planning an event for a specific dimension within our organization, let's say Pride Month or Black History Month or MLK Day, we invited individuals from that affinity group to help us in the planning. So it was no longer Kim and even the DEI steering committee planning. It was actually our team members really leaning in and helping us plan. And I saw this as a preemptive training opportunity for employee business groups. That's a focus for fiscal year 24. So I saw this as a preemptive opportunity for those team members. And I see that also as a talent retention tool, right? When people see, when there's some drivers for a sense of belonging, and at least 2 of the drivers is, do I feel like I belong to my team? And do I feel like I can really connect with the mission of the organization? And I think that that's what those initiatives have done. And of course, we have internal training programs. Some programs I design along with the team, and then others we actually have a tool that we've purchased to help bridge that gap and keep our training fresh for our team members on inclusion, allyship, unconscious bias, microaggressions, all of those things, how to support folks who are part of the LGBTQ community and that particular work. And policies and procedures, we developed several new policies. From the beginning, we really went back and looked at many of our HR policies and said, do they have inclusive language? And I can tell you in most instances, the I would say the majority of the language was inclusive, but there was an opportunity to include gender, sexual orientation, and gender identity into those policies, which we did. We established an inclusive recruitment policy. So once again, that's an outline for our directors on what our expectation is from a recruitment standpoint, really not just our managers, but also our talent acquisition team, to say it is the expectation that you're going to source diverse talent for positions, and that our managers will have a diverse slate of candidates to interview for positions. We also included a diversity, equity, and inclusion and EEO policy, once again, establishing the standards and guidelines of how we define diversity, equity, and inclusion, expectations for leaders on how they will behave and interact with their team members. We've created a supplier diversity policy where we've outlined, once again, how are we going to connect with local small businesses and give minority business owners an opportunity to do business with an organization like WellSpan, where it could be pretty complicated. I'm going to give a shout out to Anu Banks in the back here. He was one of probably the first people that we were able to connect with and established a contract with his small business to do work within WellSpan. And we actually kind of carved out part of our work from one of our larger contractors and said, hey, we're going to shift this over here. So once again, I say that's a commitment to diversity. And then finally, the knowledge sharing. And I'm going to say that, from the beginning of the Welcoming Workplaces, we've had an opportunity. We've had employers actually reach out and say, hey, can you kind of help us, think about this? How do we get things started? And that is what Welcoming Workplaces is all about. How do we make those connections with folks, as I said a little bit earlier, that may not be that far along, but just want some guidance or wants training. Either myself or my office, our manager of DEI will actually go out and do trainings as well, and she's done that also. And then finally, I'll give the mic back. 2 years ago, we really thought it was important, and I advocated that we needed to, from the very beginning, help our team members understand what does diversity, equity, and inclusion mean at WellSpan, and also introduce that concept of unconscious bias, because I think that that's kind of like that foundational knowledge that is so important as folks are trying to understand this work and understand the fact that we all have unconscious biases, but that there are opportunities to mitigate those biases. So when we created training, every single team member was required to take that training. And then moving forward, new hires are required to take that training as they join our organization. So once again, we've level set it, and we're in the process of refreshing that education so that we can go back and educate everyone again. So they're just some of the things, and I just had to jot down, or else I would have got lost. I get so excited. So I would have got lost in just sharing some of the things that we're doing at WellSpan. Thank you.
So let me first say I love my job. Anybody who's met me before knows I'm always wearing some Harley. I'm always talking about Harley. Come from the biker community. I do love my job. I've been with Harley for almost 12 years now. And this isn't an HR initiative. I'm an HR manager who's very interested in diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. So this is the side work that I do, and that some of the other partners in our organization that they volunteer to do in addition to what their normal work is. So for Harley-Davidson, inclusive stakeholder management, which is us focusing on people, prioritizing people, planet, and profit, this falls under that group. So our VP actually sits on the executive management team. She's there with the CEO and other leads, including the HR VPs, to discuss, again, how does diversity, equity, and inclusion fit into our overall company strategy, and how we move forward with that. So just to give you an idea, so we have, again, like I said, Harley has about 5,500 employees across the globe. 1,500 are at York, and about 1,390 are hourly union employees. So my population is a population that doesn't sit in front of a computer all day. So some of the ways that we have to go about addressing attracting talent, retention, even knowledge sharing is a little different depending on the population that we're going for. We are still majority white male type organization in manufacturing, which is what a lot of people do see. Talent attraction. So a few things that we did a few years ago, back in 2018, we actually enacted Ban the Box, and which is during the application process, we aren't asking about your criminal background. That usually can open up a lot of bias if that first box on the application, has that criminal background information on there. The other thing we took away was asking your salary history or your current salary, because studies showed that they found that women, for example, most times have a history of making less than men. So that already kind of puts you in a box when you're applying for jobs. So we removed that as well. We have a flexible vacation policy. That was exciting. Again, when you think about all of the dimensions of diversity, that attracts people at various levels. So for our exempt population, as a flexible vacation policy, they work with their leadership team on what they need to do. Virtual mindset. Back in 2020, we introduced this concept. Our corporate office is not even, they're not in the corporate office anymore. They're actually remote. So implementing policies and procedures that allow an employee to be remote and still feel like they belong to this organization. So if you go on our website now, you'll see about 60 jobs that actually are remote positions where you can work anywhere and you live anywhere and still work for Harley-Davidson and enjoy the benefits of our organization. Our advertising and talent attraction, believe it or not, we are really focusing on how we show up in advertising. You see a lot more people of color. You'll see a lot more women in our advertisements and women in a respectable manner. All right. We want to make sure our dealerships are presenting women, people of color in a respectable manner as well, to be a little more diverse or to intentionally be very diverse in how we're attracting talent, not only to work for Harley-Davidson, but also to want to buy our products. For talent retention, we have the employee resource groups, and a lot of the folks at my table back here are part of the employee resource group program. And it's actually employee-led conversations. We have an African-American group, military, LGBTQ plus group, women's organization, Hispanic, Latinx, young professionals, and Asian professionals offerings across the organization. We've been doing that for a while. And the key thing I want to mention is that you don't have to be a member of that group to lead the group. Two of my allies here, two white males, one leads the women's organization and the other one leads the African-American organization. And they volunteered. Again, they're fabrication managers by day and they make time for this work. And I truly appreciate the efforts that they do, as well as the other part of talent retention, again, because it is an hourly workforce mixed in with the salary workforce that's not in front of computers. I have people on my team that we literally do poster boards and cafeteria displays and print out pictures and contests, and we put things on mobile display units. So there are very simple ways that you can show people that things matter for them. We just celebrated International Women's Day. We're doing a women's contest, nominate your outstanding women of York. So we do various things, again, to try to help people realize that they do belong. Another thing that we did, the hardwire equity, a few years ago, our CEO, Jochen Zietz, he actually made individuals shareholders in our organization. We never had that happen before. And so we have a three-year vested equity stock in our organization. That's something that a lot of people just don't get an opportunity to do. Policies and procedures. So just like WellSpan, we do have a supplier diversity policy. We are intentional about who we work with and how we work with them and what our expectations of those individuals are. Same thing with our employees. We have a code of business conduct. We have training that they have to do. We have reporting requirements. We do the regular training as well to make sure that, hey, we are focused on making sure that there is inclusion and belonging for individuals. Knowledge sharing. So we've done an HD learning series back in 2020 and 2021 about being an ally. Again, that's not something that people really know how to show up as. So that was a training that we were able to do with over 4,500 individuals globally. We've had our legal team do a 21-day challenge where they really got to know each other and learn about different topics by sharing videos and having conversations about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Right now, something I participated in twice is the Human Library. We partner with that organization where you are on a Zoom call and you have an individual on that call that you can ask a question to. They're an open book, and that's what the concept is all about, where you can ask them any kind of question that you want. And it could be anything from mental health to I'm part of the Amish community to an African-American person who's a CEO. It's a wide variety of things that you can do with that. We've also participated in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, YWCA race conversation on race initiatives. And lastly, I'll add something else that we've, now more recently participated in is with YWCA York here. We're doing a Unite to Heal program. So a few of us got together and we're doing some training on that. So if anyone's interested in having racial healing conversations, there's a group of us through YWCA that's working on that. And that's something I also plan to bring to Harley. So that is all that I have, and I think we are at questions. Sorry. I know, you mentioned a lot of microphones. I would say that first off, it's not easy work, Jane. I think you know that. It can be mentally and emotionally taxing. But why I show up every day is when people who otherwise don't feel seen, feel seen. And it's because of a program or a survey or something that, initiative that the Office of DEI has implemented that elevates that voice. Because every voice deserves to be heard. So, so that's why I do it. And I would echo that and just say, when you know what it feels like to be left out, you do your hardest to make sure no one else feels that way. So sometimes it's not my world that I'm fighting for, right? LGBTQ plus community is a perfect one. It's one I had to learn to be an ally for because I didn't know how. But again, I saw some opportunities there, and that's where the new fight was. So that kind of is what drives my passion.
What has been the pleasant surprise that we've discovered in this work, and what has been the biggest rock that's just blown the gun?
I'm going to start with the rock, believe it or not. I just, for some reason, even though, like I said, it's difficult work, I lead with glass half full mentality, and I just expect everybody to come along. Hey, it's business case. I mean, it's the right thing to do. It's about human beings and just being respectful. But that's not reality. That's not reality, right? So probably that's the biggest rock and the biggest surprise, for someone who's the ultimate optimist, just recognizing that and continuing to move forward and call people in by educating and hoping that they recognize exactly what I just said. We're talking about human beings.
The biggest rock or hurdle really is because we have 1,390 hourly employees. We're making motorcycles, and that's what we're there for. So sometimes it's just how do you make time to communicate and be able to have those conversations, those uncomfortable conversations. So that's my biggest challenge, just because of my population. And my biggest surprise is I know I have conversations with people on a daily basis where I am the only Black person they speak to. I would never know that from our conversations, right? So you never know that seed that you plant and just building that relationship. Because it's a little different when you're like, oh, I know that person. So I feel a little differently about that community or about what that person thinks, or I can respect what they think because I've met that individual. You put a face and a name to it. So those are always my surprises when that happens.
I would say for us, it truly has been the Inclusion Champion program to date. And I didn't say this earlier, but another impactful areas, one area that we from the very beginning focused and leaned into is that we needed to increase racial diversity in our executive leadership. So when we started to work, it was we were at 8%, and that number has continued to grow. We're at 17% as of today, and that's a huge movement in a short window of time. But it was done with intentionality, and so I would say that work, and now we can shift and move it down into our middle management area where we know we have opportunities, and like I said, the Inclusion Champion Initiative.
For me, it was pronouns. Believe it or not, just understanding that myself, then finding ways to educate others on that. And then as an organization, just from efforts from our York hourly employees recommending it, it became something we did company-wide where we said, here's why you should use pronouns. You should put them in your email signature, and this is what they mean, and this is why it's important. So for me, that was very impactful because that's not something I would have thought would have been something that would happen. So thank you.
Dee and Kim, thank you so much for your presence with us today and for your presentation, and much more importantly, for the incredible work that you're doing, not only in your own organizations, but by default, work that is touching on our whole community. At one point, one of you mentioned that this is hard work. My experience is all the important things in life are usually hard. So thank you for taking on hard work and setting the bar, frankly, not just for your own companies, but for all of us, including the Rotary Club of York, which has been at this work for a couple of years as well. And we're inspired by seeing what you're doing on our behalf. So thank you very much. In honor of our speakers today, they have signed the book plate in the book, Ties Travels All Aboard by Kelly Starling Lyons, and we will be donating that to the York Day Early Learning at York Tech, along with now a bookmark that has been created by students at Creative York. And so thank you again for that. Next week, we will hear from economist Linda Dussel, a senior equity strategist with Federated Hermes, who is responsible for articulating the strategy, process, positioning, and performance of Federated Hermes equity portfolios. Linda will be discussing, among other things, Bitcoin and other virtual currencies that I don't understand at all. The blockchain has been called one of the most disruptive innovations since the advent of the internet. The presentation explains the concept and many others that are important to understand, as well as opportunities and risks in cryptocurrencies in general and Bitcoin in particular. Our closing quote for the day comes from L. Frank Baum, who said, "Imagination has given us the steam engine, the telephone, the talking machine, and the automobile, for these things had to be dreamed of before they could become realities." Ladies and gentlemen, have a lovely afternoon. This meeting is adjourned.